You know, Mr. Speaker, in general, I've heard stories about how things used to be back when our party controlled this chamber. And I think on par, I heard some stories about how our majority leader had to sit at the other end of a committee room from a member of his party. And I know, Mr. Speaker, you indulge us on debate. Usually we're allowed to speak to a bill. Yesterday, I think we had the opportunity to ask a couple questions, and before anybody was even allowed to speak for or against the bill, debate was cut off. Now, I mean, I'm new here. I've only been here 2 years. But I don't believe I've ever seen that happen. And, you know, we're not debating anything important, only reorienting the bones of democracy. But I would ask, what is there to hide? What is the other side afraid of when we're talking about changing people's votes and how they're counted? Why are we not debating that as fully as we can? Why can't we have a discussion about what the public policy ought to be on that?
Gentleman talking about the bill.
Yes, sir. I'm talking about yesterday we didn't have a chance to debate it, so I'm going to be getting to the bill, but I just wanted to raise that point first.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, having said that, let's talk about HB 69. A smart man once said, sorry, 63, thank you. Yesterday, we started to talk about it, but we never got a chance to talk. Now, a wise man once said, bad politicians are sent to Washington by good people who don't vote. And that's also true, I think, Your Honor, of a lot of elections. Just look at me. No, just kidding. But, Mr. Speaker, no ayes and nays. Mr. Speaker, there's no question in my mind this bill is designed to prevent more people from voting. There's a lot of things that my constituents sent me down here to do. I sent out surveys, I have town hall meetings, and you know, people have talked to me about making jobs, about improving our transportation problem, our educational system. The one thing I never hear anything about is we have problems at the polling places. But we've heard a lot of bills about a lot of things that none of my constituents really care about a lot so far. This is one of them. Now, what are the consequences of this bill? I've sat in canvasses. I've sat when provisional ballots are looked at. This is going to result in votes not being counted. This bill says that when provisional ballots are looked at, we're not allowed to have maximum transparency, debate, and discussion. We're not allowed to have people there to advocate on behalf of these people except for their designated representative. Now, who are we talking about? In my first election, I went out and knocked doors. Right next to my high school, there's a few houses right in the middle of the land of my high school. And I was knocking doors, and I ran into a woman who was 105 years old. Her name was Mattie Lou Ware. Pretty sure Mattie Lou doesn't have a driver's license, because pretty sure she don't drive and she don't get out of the house very much. I met another woman down the street, Mildred Downing, 96 years old at the time. Mildred, I tried to get her to vote absentee. She wouldn't do it. She said, I vote at the polling place. That's where I vote. I don't vote absentee. And sure enough, when I was out there shaking hands at my polling place, a car pulled up, the passenger door opened, not the driver door, because she don't drive. And Mildred got out, came up to me and got in my face and said, I told you I was coming to vote and I'm here. I don't think Mildred has a license. I don't know whether she has a birth certificate or whether she would think to bring her voter card or whether she would think to bring these other forms of ID. You know what? I don't care. She's 96 years old. She's lived her entire life. She shouldn't have to bring it. I met a man in my last election, Paul Ferguson, or Sam Ferguson, I'm sorry, Sam. Sam grew up in my district. Sam was born in Gum Springs, the oldest historically black neighborhood in Fairfax County. Sam grew up on a farm, milking cows and raising pigs in Fairfax County, right in my district. He had to attend all black schools because that's all they would let him go to. He served in a segregated army in World War II. He went on to work at Fort Belvoir for another 20 years after he retired. And Sam doesn't get around as much anymore. And so the only time I was able to see him was in his apartment. I don't think he would have the documentation necessary to vote. And you know what? I don't care if he has it. The man served our country. The man is who he is. He ought to be able to vote if he comes and says he is who he is. These people should not be required, without a license, to get in a car or to take 3 buses or to hire a lawyer to come defend their vote at some hearing at the Fairfax County Government Center or wherever the votes are cast in your locality. I have a convent in my district. There's 30,000 nuns there. 30,000. There's 30 nuns there. 30 nuns, the Sisters of Poor Clare. The sisters, I'm pretty sure they don't ever leave the convent, but I'm pretty sure they don't have a driver's license either. The lawsuit that went to the United States Supreme Court that dealt with this problem was originated by a bunch of nuns in Indiana who were prohibited from voting because they didn't have proper paperwork. I called the DMV because, you know, I practice law, and I said to them, and I see licenses trade hands every day in a courtroom between people and law enforcement. They're taken away. And I said to the DMV, how many license suspensions are issued every year? They told me 500,000. Now, not all those licenses are actually forfeited because people don't always realize their license is suspended, but a lot of times they're taken when they're stopped for a speeding ticket. The officer will take it away. A lot of times when they're in court, the deputy will take it from them as it's suspended. I also asked the DMV, I said to them, tell me how many licenses are reported lost, because I've had clients that have lost their license. They told me that 20,000 licenses are reported lost in Virginia every year. So who are we disenfranchising? Who are we requiring to come and hire lawyers or find somebody to go down and advocate for them or take 3 buses to get there? We're talking about our grandparents. We're talking about veterans. We're talking about the blind. We're talking about nuns. We're talking about people who are careless. We're talking about people who happen to have their court date within a week of an election. Is that the public policy we want to raise, that we want this Commonwealth to stand for? Where in the Bill of Rights? Where in the Virginia Declaration of Rights?
Mr. Speaker.
The
point of order.
gentleman may state it.
Is the gentleman speaking to the bill, or is he speaking to House Bill 9 that we passed about 10 minutes ago?
I think he thinks he's speaking to the bill.
I know he does, Mr. Speaker.
I am, Mr. Speaker. This bill...
I think he's winding up.
I'm almost there, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 63, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 9 is the man that leans down behind you. House Bill 63 is the guy that pushes you over and knocks you down, from my point of view. I think they're tied together. When I hear these bills and I think about the policy it establishes, I don't hear the voices of our founding fathers. I hear the voice of somebody else. Somebody else once said, the people who cast the votes don't decide an election. The people who count the votes do. You know who said that? Joseph Stalin. Now, I find it ironic when the rest of the world is moving towards democracy, when we have the Arab Spring going on and democracy spreading across the world, that here we are adopting more and more procedures to restrict democracy, to make it harder. A great United States Supreme Court justice said, sunshine is the best disinfectant, and light is the most effective policeman. That was Justice Brandeis. And the value of these canvasses that I've attended, where these provisional ballots are counted, is sunshine. You get as many people in the room talking about these issues, debating them so that everybody can see what happens. You don't restrict what happens until we cast this vote in a minute. But I hear other voices, Mr. Speaker. And the gentlelady from Richmond reminded me today of another voice that I hear often when I'm in this chamber and that I hear often whenever I think about these issues, and that voice is my grandmother. I'm not talking about my grandmother from Vinton, who was born in Franklin County. I'm talking about my grandmother, Flossie, who was born in Brooklyn. She moved down here in 1935 to a farmhouse in the Fairfax County countryside. Voting was important to my grandmother. Every time I brought a girlfriend home, she got cross-examination about whether she was registered. I kid you not. I kid you not. I had a couple uncomfortable conversations. But I tell you, why do I bring this up? Voting was important to my grandmother. When my grandmother moved to Virginia in 1935, she decided she wanted to vote. And she learned all about the poll tax. She learned all about literacy tests. And why is that? Because my grandmother didn't look like the people that were here. She didn't talk like the people that were here because she was Jewish. The history in this state of discrimination is not only against African Americans. The land behind my home, that adjoins my home, says that I'm not allowed to live there. The country club I worked at as a child said I ain't allowed to work there. And my grandmother made clear to me, you vote every day, every election, and you get every person you can find to vote. Because it didn't used to be that way. Now, as the gentlelady from Richmond said, my grandmother's feelings, my grandfather's feelings, the short time that I knew them, they don't live when they die. My grandmother passed away 13 years ago. They live in her son. They live in her grandson. God knows I'm going to tell my children, I'm going to tell every person with the last name Surovell for the rest of their life about what people in my family had to experience. And now when y'all say that, well, it's only going to matter, if somebody challenges the vote in one of these provisional ballot canvases, trust us. The Fairfax County Electoral Board recently had one of its newer members is a former member of the Bush Justice Department's Voting Rights Division. Why was he put there? Now, is he going to sit there silently and let all these provisional ballots go through and not object to any of them? I doubt it. Mr. Speaker, these are the kinds of things that these bills bring up in our minds. These are the kinds of things that people feel. The gentlelady from Richmond articulated it. I'm giving it a little bit of a different angle. But these bills are a big deal. And they're going to rip off a lot of scabs, off a lot of people and a lot of families across this state. HB 63 is bad legislation, just as bad as HB 9. I urge the body to vote against the bill and not take us back. Thank you.